All right, we got the recording ready to go. And so just a reminder to the presenters to share a little bit about yourself, including your degree, your program, university, and your main advisor at the beginning of your talk. And then the idea is that each presenter gets 7 minutes to present, and we'll be fairly strict about that. And then we'll have 3 minutes or so for question and answers after that. Any questions? All right, let me get my timer. Okay, Bryn, if you want to take it away.
Okay, is that coming up for everyone?
Yep.
Okay, great. Great, so hi everyone, my name is Bryn Stewart and I'm finishing up my PhD in environmental engineering with Dr. Levy at Penn State. And today I'm going to talk about some of my most recent work with the Northeast team on connecting subsurface processes to stream water quality. Right, so we know that water is the keystone to life on Earth, but water availability and water quality are both threatened by the impacts of climate change and human activity. And so some of these impacts can be very easy to see, like this photo on the left, which shows a stream that's been polluted by acid mine drainage from mining activities. And this is a very common water pollution problem in my home state of Pennsylvania, where stream water that should be clear when it's clean turns this bright orange, red, or yellow due to contamination from mining materials. We can also, in some places, see impacts of climate change on water availability, like in this photo on the right, which shows how prolonged droughts led to decreasing water levels in places like the Southwest United States between 2017 and 2022. However, some impacts on water quality can be invisible and their causes can be very difficult to interpret. So for example, the amount of a chemical species called dissolved organic carbon, or DOC, has increased over time in the stream that I'm showing in this photo on the right, which is Sleepers River in Vermont. And so we can see this trend in DOC when we're looking at multiple decades of stream chemistry data. However, we wouldn't notice that this is happening just by looking at the stream while we're walking through the forest. And so it can be really difficult to determine what causes this type of gradual change in water quality, because water quality is controlled by many different factors, ranging from climate and weather to the types of plants and rocks that are in an area. In addition, stream water quality is also dependent on the different sources of water that enter a stream, including water that flows underground. And so to fully understand the controls on water quality, we need to understand what's happening in the subsurface. However, we can't see everything that's happening underground. We can't measure everything that's happening underground. So we need tools to help us see the invisible subsurface. And so in this work, I use a computer model to simulate some of the different processes that influence stream chemistry, including how different reactions produce chemical species in different areas of the subsurface, and how water moves through the subsurface to export or carry those chemicals into the stream. And so for this presentation, I'm going to focus on dissolved organic carbon, or DOC, which is that chemical species that's been increasing over time at our study site in Sleepers River. And so DOC essentially comes from living things when they break down in the environment. So if you think about leaves falling off of trees into the ground, those leaves can get eaten up by critters and then broken down in the soil, where it can be dissolved in water and eventually carried into the stream. And so by simulating the different reactions that produce and consume dissolved organic carbon and how water moves through the subsurface, we can use our model to understand or to answer a couple questions like how, when, and where DOC is produced in the subsurface, and how, when, and where DOC gets exported or carried into the stream. And so before we get into the chemistry, we first need to know when and where water is moving through the subsurface. And so in our model, we have 3 major paths that water can flow through, including surface flow, which enters the stream directly from over the land surface, shallow soil water flow from the shallow zone of the subsurface, and deeper groundwater flow from the deeper zone of the subsurface. And so when we ran our model to simulate the stream flow at Sleepers River, we found that most of the stream flow comes from deeper groundwater at about 64%, but we also have shallow soil water flow contributing to the stream at about 35%, and that especially happens after rainstorms or snowmelt, which is when all the snow that builds up over winter melts away in the spring. And so when we ran our model, again, we looked at how, when, and where DOC is produced and exported. And we found that there were different controls on DOC production versus DOC export. And so in particular, temperature and seasonality had a strong control on DOC production, where reactions occur faster under warmer conditions, especially in summer months and also in spring months. DOC is also produced more in the shallow zone compared to the deep zone, as the shallow zone is closer to those plants and animals at the land surface that produce a lot of DOC. However, the export, or the amount of DOC that gets carried into the stream, depended more on when and how water moves to the subsurface. And so, as I said, since DOC is typically more produced in the shallow zone, we typically see much more DOC being carried to the stream when we have water flowing through that zone. And so that typically happens under those wetter conditions, like after a rainstorm or after snow melt. And so overall, we have a pretty strong climatic influence on DOC production and export through increased production during warmer temperatures and increased export under wetter conditions. And so this suggests implications for the future due to climate change, as we expect places like Sleepers River and the Northeast US to become warmer and wetter in the future. And so while this work was more focused on understanding some of the different processes that influence stream chemistry, I plan to expand upon this work by looking at how different climate change impacts influence subsurface processes and stream chemistry, with a specific focus on increased storm events, which we expect for the Northeast and for Sleepers River. And so we also know from previous studies and from this figure on the right that DOC concentrations in the stream increase a lot during these storms. And so I'm really interested in figuring out how those subsurface processes behave on the event timescale during these storms and how that might affect stream chemistry in the future. And so that's all I have, but I unfortunately won't be at the all hands meeting, but I'd be happy to chat about this work elsewhere. And I'm also finishing my PhD this summer, and I'll be starting a postdoc in the fall. So would love to continue collaborating with this group in any capacity. So if you're interested in using this model in any way, feel free to reach out. But thanks.
Thanks, Bryn. That was great. Does anybody have any questions, comments that they'd like to share? Julia.
Yeah, thanks so much, Bryn. And I left comments in there. I just really love how accessible you make this. I thought it was really interesting to see the mismatch sort of in time when a lot of your materials are produced versus when they are being transported out. And so I wonder if you're also thinking about soil respiration, especially over summer, when a lot of the materials that are being produced might actually be lost in other ways and never make it into the streams. Can you talk a little bit about that part?
Yeah. So I don't have my I have time series figures to show that in more depth, but essentially we still see that DOC is produced the most during summer when we have lots of organic carbon decomposition in the shallow soils. So even if that's kind of combated by the consumption of DOC through things like soil respiration, it seems like the production kind of outweighs that. And that's kind of just the dominant time where we see DOC being produced.
Great, Donna.
Yeah, this is a great talk, and you made it very accessible, and usually people don't like models. So the only slide I might change is where I think you had somewhere that said that the model allows you to see the results or whatever. I just in case you're presenting to people who don't believe in models or believe models are only as good as the ones that get how their calibration looks. Is it possible to either change that phrasing to it just allows you to test hypotheses, but maybe provide a slide that just shows what was calibrated so that people would trust the results? Or yeah, that's the
absolutely.
only, just a phrasing thing, even though you came back to that at the very end. Because sometimes people in the audience just shut down, take it from someone who's tried to present a lot of models to people in my lifetime, that if they don't buy into the original model as good, then, they won't believe your recommendations, especially if they're many years out into the future.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
And then final question, I think it was from John in the chat, hypotheses as to why DOC is increasing over decades.
Yeah, so I think there are a couple that have come out of Julia's group and other places as well, because this is also happening outside of Sleepers River. But I think the two kind of dominant hypotheses are that the increasing DOC over time could be a result of the recovery from acidification in places like Sleepers River, where we get more DOC released from soils with less acidic and less ionically strong precipitation that enters the catchment. And then also there's the issue of climate change being a control, as well as we get either more storm events over time or warming temperatures that may be producing more DOC over time, leading to kind of this overall increasing trend, but still very much debated in literature and part of what we're trying to figure out.
Great. Thanks, Bryn.
Yeah, thank you.
Great. All right, we'll move on to Niara.
Alrighty. Okay.
And then just a reminder to folks listening in that they can play along in the Google Doc that's linked. Comments, questions are appreciated.
Can everyone see this?
Can't see it yet.
No?
Says-
Okay.
Let's try resharing it.
Okay. Okay. How about now?
Just double click to enter full screen mode. Try that.
Okay.
Still no luck.
Nothing? Okay.
Why don't I have Ijaz present if Ijaz is okay with going next? And then maybe if you want to try restarting your computer and rejoining the
Okay. Yeah, this is a new laptop, so I'll just rejoin.
There might be some sort of permission that you need to give your laptop as well.
Okay.
All right, Ijaz, are you
so
okay?
Can you see my screen, everyone?
Yes. Yep.
Okay.
And
So my presentation does not have a lot of cool geoscience pictures, but I'm a computer science student, so I will be trying to make you understand what I'm trying to do. So unlocking the potential of neural architecture search, NAS, in environmental science. It's an exploration of advanced machine learning techniques for environmental time series anomaly detection. I'm from UVM Computer Science Department. My advisor is Byung Lee. So let's delve into the captivating domains of machine learning, or ML, and its subset, deep learning, or DL. So machine learning equips computer with the ability to learn patterns and make decisions from data without explicit programming. So deep learning advances this concept by using artificial neural networks, computer models mimicking the human brain structure, to learn intricate patterns in large data sets. In essence, both ML and DL offers transformative tools to translate raw data into insightful findings, paving the way for future prediction, complex pattern recognition, and informed decision making. So the problem is like creating optimal neural networks in machine learning and deep learning is very complex. It's about fine-tuning many layers and parameters, like looking for a needle in a haystack. This process is mostly trial and error based, and changing just one thing can have a big impact. So it needs expert knowledge and understanding. So although neural networks are powerful, making them work best is a complex task and as challenging as the patterns they are trying to learn. So let's introduce a game changer. This is called Neural Architecture Search, or NAS. It's like our AI-powered assistant in neural network design. NAS removes the need for tedious manual adjustment and instead automatically crafts an efficient network for our problem. So not only does NAS save us time, but it also helps us find the most effective neural network structure. It's our guide in this complex journey, making the network design both easier and more successful. So NAS is truly transforming our field. Like, it automates and simplifies neural network design, saving us time. It's like upgrading from manual to digital design. So NAS also foster innovation, discovering new effective network designs that might be overlooked manually. Think of it as an explorer finding a hidden treasure in the world of networks architecture. So finally, NAS is efficient, directing computational resources towards promising models instead of wasting them. So simply put, NAS is a game changer, offering automation, innovation, and efficiency to neural network design. So expanding horizons, NAS in environmental and geosciences. So it holds a huge potential in environmental and geoscience. It can be our decoder for complex pattern, helping us to understand our intricate system. It could be our crystal ball for multivariate forecasting, learning variable interactions, and predicting future trends. And importantly, it can act as our detective for anomaly detection, identifying significant deviation in our large data sets, pointing us to key events or issues. So in short, NAS has the capacity to revolutionize our ability to comprehend and forecast the complexity of our natural world. So a peek into our future, a unique approach. So that's what I'm trying to do right now, but I'm just giving you some hints and the details I'm sharing with my advisor for now. But we are excited to share like this new direction we are exploring in environmental sciences. It's a unique approach to neural architecture search, which we believe could help us better handle the intricate patterns of time series data. Picture or approach like master map maker. It's learning to chart the landscape of data, picking out patterns of all shape and sizes. Each size stands for different time scale in our data, and our approach is aimed at making sense of all of them. So what's really exciting here is that we are working towards it being able to spot the unusual landmarks, the anomalies in our data, and it doesn't stop there. Because we hope that once it understands the landscape of one data set, it could apply the understanding to others data sets, saving us time and effort, which is called transfer learning in machine learning. So what does all this mean? We are embarking on a promising journey that could change how we interpret our data and make more accurate predictions. In summary, I can say we are looking towards an exciting transformation in how we understand and analyze data in environmental sciences. It's a thrilling future, and it's just the beginning. Thank you. That's all.
All right. Thanks, Ijaz. We have plenty of time for questions if folks have them.
Yeah, I hope. I think Donna will be excited to ask something if she can.
I like Ijaz. He's like, that's all. Yeah, we're just trying to revolutionize stuff. You know, that's all.
I mean,
Julie?
last time I was doing this research, I was using static models, like a bunch of static models and automatic their tuning process. But this time I'm trying to build like networks from scratch, and it can be progressive. So for different data set, that network making process will be like adjusting itself to the data which we feed in, and it can also be like used as a transfer learning process. For example, if I make it learn one data set from one watershed or somewhere, and then other data sets from other watershed, we will not need to be training it a lot. Maybe we can just transfer the previous knowledge to that and it can still work. So this is something, there is already work done on NAS, but I'm coming up with improvement of whatever has been done, and specifically my networks will be working on this time series environmental data. So it will be some kind of a tool, you can say, but my professors like computational methods, so I'm touching that side, plus I'm touching this CZCN side as well, and so that's what I'm trying to do. Questions, please.
Yeah, Julia has a question.
Julia, please. Yeah.
I have a communications question for you, because I really appreciated the language that you use, right? And I put a couple of comments there, but like to chart the, or what did you say, the chart, I wrote it down, something with the map of the data and kind of accessible language. And so my question to you is, for you as a data scientist, does it make a difference to you for those presentations that we had in the research slam, like everybody's trying to make it as accessible as possible and not being in the weeds. So does it make a difference for you, like the way how these presentations are done and trying to be more accessible? And then also in return, what is the most challenging piece for you in trying to make your very complex research as accessible as possible to folks that might not live in data science every day long?
So I think like if I work closely with this geoscientist friends and them, so from them I learn what they need, and I think of my ideas from there, that what can be done to make the tools or things accessible or easy for them to use. Like for example, last week, Gabriel and we were working on the CCM conversion cross mapping. So that tool is difficult to implement. So I tried to implement that and we got a lot of good results. So I'm trying, like for all of you, if there is any tool which you guys think is not easy to use, so just reach out to me. My challenge is that I need to like try to understand the requirements of the geoscientist all the time. So if I understand them well, I can provide solution well. I think so. Is that a good answer?
That is a good answer. Thank you to Ijaz. And also like, I hope we can more and more get to a way where we can make it easy for each other to understand each other. I know every once in a while, or often we need to get into the weeds, but yeah, really appreciate like the how you make it accessible for us to learn, to understand what you're doing, for sure.
And yeah, Donna, yeah, please.
And I totally agree with everything that Julia just said, but I have, if you were to present this to someone on the, even on the deep neural network side, since there are hundreds of thousands of very different kinds of deep neural networks, I guess I'm struggling to understand how you would deal with all of those different types, or are you planning to tackle just start with one type? Because my understanding of NAS is that's just the storage and retrieval part of it. It doesn't really have anything to do with the choice of algorithm that you use. And I put a minor little comment in there on, so alienate, remember, an audience that's already favors artificial neural networks. You have to keep using the word deep, because deep neural nets are the ones that now are being trained by trial and error. There are hundreds of, 3-layer networks that you don't have to do that with. So it's just terminology to make certain that people will believe that you can pull off what you're proposing.
Right. Okay, I like this advice. And I would say this NAS it was started in 2017, but it's getting better with time. So there are ways. For example, before we were just tuning the parameters in the previous research.
Right.
Here we are trying to make a search space of different cells. For example, there is a RNN cell, there is a CNN cell, there are many other different GRUs, self-attentions, like a big search space. So we are trying to optimize that search space, and optimization algorithms are there, but this time I'm thinking I will reveal that I'm using reinforcement learning, and then I'm also using try to implement it in hierarchical way, like in a hierarchy, like which will help us not to use a big model for small data set, but it will start from a small and then grow according to the data set. And also meta learning I'm trying to include in this, so we can learn from the data, and according to the data we will design the network. So mathematical things are more involved. I'm trying to do literature review all the time, so to compete or match the current research, ongoing research in that area.
Okay.
So that's what I'm trying to do. And then I will be using all those anomaly detection model in my search space. For example, not the classification models maybe, but unsupervised learning models which can detect the anomalies, which we use specifically for anomalies detection. So all depends on my search space. My search space can be different than what other people are doing. And every time my algorithm will give me a novel architecture from scratch. It will not be matching any models which is already in the market there.
But preface it from the point of view that it's going to be driven by the fact that you have a very specific problem, because the choice, even for yours, of algorithms is going to be, it's going to eliminate hundreds of thousands right off the bat, because other people may want to do very different tasks.
So there are, like for example, the literature I'm looking at, they are trying on time series data sets. There are many time series data sets. At this time, I'm focusing on public data sets, like not the one which we can publish, which we cannot publish along with the paper like previously. So the current approach is, I'm trying to make a hybrid model. My favorite thing is making hybrids. If I'm not very, very mathematically strong as other scientists, I try to connect dots, like take one idea, another, and try to make another thing from that. And then I will try those all public data sets. And in terms of computation, in terms of accuracy, there are many things which we can do comparison to, to try
We can
to
talk offline.
Yeah, just for the sake of time, we're going to wrap this up, but thank you so much, Ijaz.
Thank you.
Okay.
All right, if you want to stop sharing, Ijaz. Okay. Niara, we want to give it another go.
Yes, okay. Okay, can everyone see this?
Oh, we can this time. All right.
Okay. Cool. Hello, everyone. My name is Niara. I am at the University of Vermont. My advisor is Dr. Julia Perdriel, and I am working on my master's in geology right now. So I want to talk to you about water being the essence of, actually, I want to acknowledge Dr. Kristen Underwood, who is also on my committee and is in this meeting, and Dr. Beverly Wimple. So water is the essence of life, but have you ever thought about how what lies beneath the surface can also impact it? So my research focuses on the interactions between 3 specific critical zone services, those being water quality, water quantity, and vegetation health. So we all are familiar with the critical zone. So my project is acknowledging how as water moves throughout the critical zone, filtering through the top layer of soil down past the tree roots into groundwater and bedrock, it can pick up different things called solutes on the way down. And those solutes can tell us different things because different solutes are a product of pollution or just subsurface weathering, and that can tell us about the water quality in a certain watershed. So the problem here is that some watersheds that were once wet many years ago are becoming drier as climate change gets worse. And that can lead to water with higher concentrations of solute because there's not much water to wash them out. And how might this impact vegetation responses to water and overall water quality? And we need to know where this problem is getting worse and where the more vulnerable watersheds are in order to mitigate this issue. So this is a diagram, modified diagram from Dr. Lee, who's also in our group. And what she found was that wet watersheds or watersheds with more water in them in the system have higher quality than dry watersheds. And this is because systems with more water in them can dilute the solutes within them. So there's not as high concentrations of solutes in them. So my overarching hypothesis is that stream water quality resilience is a function of physical critical zone properties and vegetation resilience. So physical critical zone properties for this project, we are talking about bedrock and bedrock permeability and porosity. And that can look different based on the type of bedrock. So this is why I'm showing you these. On the left is how permeability is determined for sedimentary rocks. And that's just like the amount of pore space between the pores in those rocks. And then for igneous and metamorphic rocks, it's more about the fracture and the cracks in the rocks and how easily water can go inside the cracks and through them. This is a map showing that their bedrock types and porosity and permeability varies across the regions in the US. On the left shows subsurface permeability varying from low to high, and then subsurface porosity varying from low to high across the states. And this is a map showing the main different types of bedrocks across the United States, also showing that it's very vast and varies across different regions in the US. Another critical zone property that we will be looking into is vegetation resilience. This is a diagram basically showing what we call hydrotrophism, which is when a plant has an issue reaching water because of water stress or drought. What a plant can do is extend its roots system and lengthen its roots to reach the water. And then this is a map showing that the rooting depth or length can also vary across different regions in the US. And so my first hypothesis is that water quality is higher in streams that are over rocks that are more permeable, that allow more water to run through them easily, because it allows for more water to enter and exit the system, which will flush out solutes more easily. And then my other hypothesis is that water quality is lower in watersheds where the plant roots are longer, because plants compete to obtain more water from the system, and that results in there being more solutes in the streams because the plants are taking a lot of the water from the system. So those are those two hypotheses. And then combining those two hypotheses is that water quality resilience against climate change is strongest in watersheds with shorter root depth and higher permeability of soils and rocks. And all my data is coming from a large database called the CAMELS-CHEM database. That stands for Catchment Attributes and Meteorology for Large Sample Studies. And this is where I am obtaining elevation data, land use, bedrock type of over 600 watersheds across the US. And then a member from our group added stream flow and chemistry data to that data set, which is why I'm allowed or able to do this type of analysis. So on the top left is just a map showing the different ecoregions across the United States. And the map below that shows the dryness index across the United States. So some areas are more dry than others. And then this diagram on the right is the BDECO framework. And this is basically how I will be determining whether a catchment is considered wet or dry. and then plotting that data on there to show the concentrations of different solute concentrations for different catchments. And an example of that also from Dr. Lely, showing the different concentrations of nitrogen for different catchments here. The size of the circle correlates to the concentration of, not nitrogen, sodium. Yeah. And I am done.
Great. Thanks, Niara. Are there any questions?
Yes, Julia.
I'm clapping my hands. I did not raise
So
it,
that-
but I think Donna raised her hand.
Donna
I
has a
did.
question.
Clap first and then switched it to a raised hand. So nice job. The only thing I might have missed is the data that were plotted for the you said bedrock material.
Mhm.
Is that correlated to the unconsolidated material that's above it? I never really thought to put those two together. So, I mean, I know certain bedrock can be really porous, like limestones and things like that, but often the part of the subsurface, right, where groundwater is flowing is not the bedrock, or it, it's the time at which it takes, obviously, to either reach a stream that's gaining as opposed to losing. So are there papers out there? I haven't read them, but are there papers that link the bedrock material to the unconsolidated soils above it that allow the flow? I guess I always assumed that the unconsolidated materials were more a function of the erosion rates, which would obviously have something to do with, the geology that sticks up out of the surface. But I just assumed a lot of it had to do with the organic material and the amount of time that it took those unconsolidated sediments to deposit there, and glaciers and things like that.
That's definitely a good point to pay attention to. I haven't done much background reading on like the unconsolidated sediments, mostly on just the bedrock material. But I think that would be worth looking more into.
And one, only because I'm just envisioning all of the data that's in these databases. The experiments that people performed were often for very different reasons, right? So we're measuring things in streams, but where the flow of the water occurs, what makes its way to the stream, we don't often know how long it's spent in the various zones, the resident time in the unconsolidated material. But I honestly think that's a really interesting thing to dig into, just because you would think certain parts of the country, right, have variety of areas that are bedrock material, and I would think there has to be some linkage to that. So anyway, I just wanted you to give me a paper if you found something like that, because I find it fascinating. So I'm lowering my hand now.
Thanks,
Thank you
Donna.
for that.
All right, Jamie, did you have a question?
Yeah, thanks. Nice job, Niara. So I just wanted to kind of elaborate a little bit on Donna's comment, and I agree. I don't know that that the subsurface and the bedrock would necessarily be linked. I just wonder if you might want to look at this at the superficial geology as kind of another variable, because I agree that that's going to be really important, maybe more important than the bedrock in some cases.
Okay, thank you. I will
Thanks.
definitely look into that.
Cool.
Ben?
I also really nice job, Niara. I was thinking about the two hypotheses with the more drainage equals better water quality, and more plant roots equals worse water quality. And I was thinking about, on the drainage side, if you have, effective flow from a larger area, that might actually increase the number of locations that are connected to that point hydrologically where pollutants could come from. That you'd kind of expect the concentration to be averaged over a larger area. And so I wondered if you had any thoughts about whether something about water quality variability might be integrated, not just the overall concentration of the pollutants, but how variable they are in space or in time relative to those two really interesting parameters.
Yes, that is a thought that came to my attention from Gabrielle a couple weeks ago to look more into other sources of solutes coming into those systems. And so yes, that is a very good point that I've started looking more into as of recently.
Cool. Yeah, it seems like you're really well situated to look at both the sources of the pollutants, but also the potential retention or removal of those pollutants as it moves through the critical zone. And especially with the plant roots, it seems like those two things might be working against each other, right? Like more plant roots, more microbial activity, more potential uptake of those things, even though you've got a hydrological concentration of it, right? With less runoff, but.
Okay. Thank you for that.
Yeah, really cool work.
Right. All right. Thank you to all three presenters. And are there any final comments from Andrew and or Julia? RE future meetings is the next one. Do we see each other in Salt Lake City? Is that the next thing, or are we reconvening any other time this summer?
So there is no plans for summer meetings, not for the full group. So we'll get started back up sometime later in August, just to give people time to do all their field work and take a break and do all those important things that we do in summer. And just a shout out to everybody who is going to the all hands meeting. Especially to the students, please bring a poster. That's going to be a big component of the hub all hands meeting. And then some of you will get an email from me later today about input for planning our cluster all hands meeting, which is on the Sunday right before the hub meeting. But so this is going to be a fun meeting, I think. And then I hope everybody has a wonderful summer, as we're otherwise will not see each other. And but I'll be available if folks have questions or want to catch up on anything. Please let me know. But no, we are not going to have another full group meeting until late August.